You are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, I take you through some important images regarding the concept we treated just last week. My friends, importantly, I want to take you through the congenital anomalies that may be associated with the embryonic development of the midgut loop. And so, without wasting my time, let's set the ball rolling. Now, first of all, the point we explained last week was that as far as the midgut is concerned, we have what we call the pre-arterial segment, where is the cranial limb, and of course we have the post-arterial segment, where is the caudal limb. And this separation is with the help of an artery, which we are calling it the superior mesenteric artery. And of course, one thing we know is that the superior mesenteric artery is the artery to, of course, the midgut. Now remember, as far as the development of the midgut is concerned, what we see is that the pre-arterial segment, of course, the post-arterial segment, okay, respectively, they will be forming what we call the small intestine, of course, the large intestine. Now, these ones, they grow rapidly, such that they cannot be contained in the smaller, abdominal cavity, which is contained the larger liver and, of course, the kidneys. And so they will go and be that kind of physiological herniation of the midgut loop, okay, through something called the umbilical opening, okay, so through the umbilical opening. That's what we see. Now, one thing that we appreciate is that, first of all, once we are having the pre-arterial segment, where is of course the cranial portion, and then the post-arterial segment, where is the caudal portion, there's going to be something called the first 90 degrees anti-clockwise rotation. And my friend, that first 90 degrees anti-clockwise rotation or that counter-clockwise rotation will ensure that the pre-arterial segment will be towards the right side, while of course the post-arterial segment will be towards the left side. That's what we see. Okay. Now, if this physiological hernia fails to return, then of course omphalocele, okay, is something that will result. I'll be showing you the pictures to that effect. Now, after that, there was going to be something like another 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation, and I told you that that one, the small intestine, returns to the abdominal cavity earlier, okay, followed by, of course, the large intestine, with the post-arterial segment. It comes in, the small intestine or the pre-arterial segment comes in, and then it shifts towards the left side, creating a space for the post-arterial segment to, of course, to return and, of course, overlap it. And then finally, there will going to be another 90 degrees, counterclockwise rotation. Because the second 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation will ensure that the cecum, together with the appendix, will be in the pyloric area or in the epigastric region. And then the third and final 90 degrees anticlockwise rotation will ensure that the cecum and the appendix is taken to, of course, the subhepatic area. That is what we've established, already. Okay, so it means that the remaining 290 degrees together will be 180 degrees. Okay, we ensure that finally, okay, so that's what we see. We ensure that finally we send the cecum towards what we call the subpyloric area. And we know that that's not the final location of the cecum. The cecum will have to come into the right iliac fossa together with the appendix, and failure, okay, for the cecum to get over there will be something that may lead to failure of it is not due to rotation, but is due to the lack of the differential growth, okay, growing with, of course, the posterior abdominal wall. Because I told you that this cecum will be adhered to the posterior abdominal wall, so that as the posterior abdominal wall lengthens, then of course it lengthens with it. Okay, that's something we've established already. Now, so it means that once it returns, then of course the umbilical opening will have to close. Okay, I told that to return by the 10th week of intrauterine life. So failure for it to close, then that will lead to that kind of omphalocele. So we are going to go through essentially the congenital anomalies, and then that will be all. Now this is the first guy. The first guy, we call it omphalocele. Now I told you last week that omphalocele begins with the letter O. So it means that the intestinal, let me call the abdominal content, because it's not only the intestine, even the liver will herniate out, okay, will be contained in this sac-like structure, okay, that we find over here. Okay, so it means the abdominal content, by way of mainly the intestine, will be surrounded by this amniotic membrane. Okay, so if you have a thing, because of the non-return of the physiological hernia, okay, that will lead to this omphalocele, with the incidence occurring about 1 in 5,000, live birth. Oftentimes, the case fatality of omphalocele is greater than another one which I'll be showing you, where is the gastroschisis, for the reason that this omphalocele usually may be associated with other congenital, anomalies. Okay, so a person with omphalocele is likely going to die earlier compared to that of someone with this case that we call it gastroschisis. Now, the point is, let's look at this one. In the case of gastroschisis, the difference is that in the case of gastroschisis, it's not covered by, of course, the amniotic membrane. That's the first case. And also the herniation, okay, does not take place in what we call the umbilical opening, which is opposite to that we find in the case of the omphalocele. But rather, in the case of gastroschisis, okay, whose incidence, okay, has been shown to be about 3 in 10,000 live birth, what happens is that due to non-closure, failure of complete closure of what we call the anterolateral abdominal wall, due to, of course, some defects regarding the lateral folding of the embryo. So mainly it occurs towards the right side of what we call the embryo, and we see the intestinal content herniating out. Okay, so that's first thing that I have to know. So sometimes you may have a situation, a picture, an image like this shown to you, and the point here is that you may not see the amniotic membrane covering it. So it tells you, although it appears to be coming close to the midline, the point over here is that no, it is coming from the anterolateral abdominal wall, not through the umbilical opening, but through a defect in, of course, the anterolateral abdominal wall. That is gastroschisis. And gastroschisis oftentimes may be associated with intestinal obstruction, okay, because of the way how it comes out. Now, the other congenital anomaly, as far as the rotations of what we call the mid-gut loop is concerned, is what we call the non-rotation. Now, first of all, last week I explained to you that the first 90 degrees rotation is normal, but the remaining 180 degrees counterclockwise rotation, that is where the abnormalities may come in. Okay, and so failure of the remaining 180 degrees counterclockwise rotation to occur is something that we call non-rotation. Because I told you that the first 90 degrees rotation will ensure that the pre-arterial segment, which of course we are talking about the course of the small intestine, will be towards the right side, while the post-arterial segment will be towards, of course, the left side. So what do we see? That is exactly what we see over here. And then the axis by way of the superior mesenteric artery will be in between them. This is a case of non-rotation. Then, in situations where the remaining 180 degrees counterclockwise rotation rather goes the opposite way, instead of counterclockwise, it becomes clockwise. Then it becomes a case. Okay, that's the case that we've described over here. This is the case of non-rotation. Okay, so this becomes a case of what we call reverse rotation. Now, in the case of reverse rotation, now one point that we know about the normal rotations is that, okay, the pre-arterial segment, the one who's going to form the small intestine, will return into the abdominal cavity, shift towards the left side, create a space so that the post-arterial segment will come in. So essentially, what it means is that the pre-arterial segment will be overlapped by the post-arterial segment. That's something we appreciate, together with, of course, forming something we call a sub-pyloric segment. Okay, so now the point here is that in the case of a reverse rotation, rather, the post-arterial segment returns into the abdominal cavity earlier, okay, which will be followed by, of course, the pre-arterial segment. In such a case, the large intestine, mainly we are talking about the transverse colon, will be overlapped by, of course, the small intestine, mainly the duodenum. And oftentimes, in the situations of reverse rotation, there could be that kind of, what we call the, intestinal obstruction, not because of the overlap by the duodenum, but mainly because of the overlap also by the superior mesenteric artery. Now, so I talk about, now in situation of the second 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation, it brings the cecum and together with the appendix to the subpyloric area. Okay, that's what we see. But my friends, what will happen is that the final rotation, where is the third 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation, okay, where is the final together getting 270 degrees counterclockwise rotation, we ensure that the cecum gets below the liver, a subhepatic cecum together with the appendix. And as I told you, for this guy to come down, okay, the cecum and appendix to come down towards the right iliac fossa is not by any other rotation, but by the differential growth of the posterior abdominal wall. Okay, so that is something that I want you to become aware of. So again, showing you the subhepatic cecum. Okay, so that's where we see it. The cecum over here together with the appendix over here. This is the normal position where it's supposed to dwell. Okay, so that's the case that I want you to know. So in summary, what have we seen? We've seen non-rotation, and in non-rotation, the small intestine will be towards the right side, the large intestine will be towards the left side. In the case of reverse rotation, rather we see that the small intestine overlaps the large intestine. Mainly the transverse colon will be overlapped by the duodenum. Okay, that's what we see. And then in the case of the subpyloric cecum, I said it should be towards somewhere in the epigastric region, close towards the midline. And then we can also have, that is a situation where it doesn't proceed to the third 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation. We have a subpyloric cecum. And then finally, the third rotation will bring the cecum to the subhepatic area. Failure for the differential growth, because what will happen is the cecum will adhere to the posterior abdominal wall, so that as it lengthens, it also moves down with it. Failure for that one to happen, you get a subhepatic cecum. Now, in situations where we have subpyloric cecum, it may not present with any situation, but usually what will happen is that the cecum will still be having its peritoneal fold, okay, attached to the posterior abdominal wall. And that is something we call lad bands. Is someone's name, LADD, lad bands. And such lad bands, okay, will make the cecum a bit mobile. So it may twist on itself, and that will lead to something we call cecal volvulus. That's the complication, which may be actually dealt with, of course, this, subpyloric cecum. Now, the next guy, which is, of course, the final guy I want to talk about before we bring our meeting to a close, now, is something we call congenital megacolon. And congenital megacolon is associated with something we call Hirschsprung disease. Okay, now this is a normal case of the colon, so you can see the size uniform. Okay, the diameter is uniform. But what we see regarding this guy in situations of Hirschsprung disease is the fact that, especially getting the terminal aspect, okay, of course, the descending portion, the sigmoid portion of the colon, it has become extremely large. Okay, and that is why we are called a megacolon. Now, what we see is that in the wall, especially I'm interested in between the, mainly talking about the circular, inner circular, of course, the outer longitudinal smooth muscles, okay, of the colon. What we see is that we see what we call the myenteric nerve plexus, okay, or the orbes nerve plexus. What we see is that, especially in that portion where we have that defect, we don't really get these ganglionic cells over here, okay. So what will happen is that the muscle cannot really contract. And once they cannot contract, then of course the synergistic rule of the inner circular and outer longitudinal muscle ensures that we propel, okay, the fecal matter formed in here will be impaired. So the fecal matter may get lodged over here, and that is something, which may get compacted over there, leading to the colon becoming larger over here. And that is something we call congenital megacolon. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you find this meeting helpful. Okay, there's a quick recap showing you all those images, okay, that you had to know regarding last week's meeting. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.